all. Happy New Year. Hopefully you all enjoyed the holiday. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. I have actually 6:02. Just a reminder that the meeting is recorded. And we have everyone on the committee here tonight except for Steve Purcell. We do expect him to join, so he may be a few minutes late.
Ed, can I add one thing for everybody? Remember, don't use the chat function if you have a question or comment on Zoom. Please do not use that feature.
Yep. Thanks, Tom. I was going to remind everybody at the beginning of public comment, but that's good. All right. So the first item on the agenda tonight is to approve the minutes from last Wednesday. So I will entertain a motion from one of the committee members to approve the minutes.
I, Thomas Golden, motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
All righty. Is there a second?
I, Janet Hanson, approve second. Whatever, the meeting.
All right, you second the motion. Thank you, Janet. Is there any discussion, any changes, modifications to the minutes? If not, then Josh will take a roll call on the minutes.
Okay. Ed?
Yes.
Cleone?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes,
Darren?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you very much. Okay, next item is we invited Marilee Hunt to join us this evening to give us her perspective on a couple of items. So I know she has another meeting she needs to get to, so I wanted to get her on early in the agenda. So Marilee, I think you're on. There you are.
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it. I know you've had a busy day and you get a busy night, so.
That's okay. My other meeting is canceled, so I'm good. I'm good to go here. But
Oh, good. Okay, thank you very much. So I think you were in attendance at our last meeting, Marilee. One of the items that the committee was discussing a little bit was the potential for changing the town election dates. Right now, as you know, we have a town election in April, and then we have the federal election every couple of years, I believe, in November. And there was some discussion about that. And to be honest, we don't have enough knowledge about that subject. So we wanted the town clerk to come in and maybe give us some background on why we have it in April and what the obstacles or opportunities might be to consider changing it.
great. Thank you for asking me to do this. And I have a certain amount of my own knowledge about it. And then on top of that, I wrote to Michelle Tassinari, who's the director and legal counsel of the Secretary of the Commonwealth Elections Division. So I have my reply from her that I'll read to you as well.
Okay.
I noted when I wrote to her, my cover email to her, noted that we have to coordinate with Rainham. So whatever Bridgewater does to change, we'll have to make sure that it gets changed in Rainham as well because of the school district. The elections have to happen on the same day, and they can have a variety of times within that day, but they have to happen on the same day. So I noted that to her, and I asked her if there were other Mass General Law considerations that we should know about. And I noted to her what I remember. I wasn't town clerk then, but I think it was in 2012, maybe 13, whenever we did the recall election. I remember how confusing that was because we did that in coordination with the state election in the fall, which I'll just give you a quick little hint here. There are no federal elections. There are only state elections. So we do elect federal officers during our state elections, but all elections are held by the state unless they're local. So I asked her if about that process, if it would have to be the same process that we followed for that recall election. So I will read you now with that preface, her response to me. First is the charter. She said, you've got a lot of issues to consider. First is the Charter Review Committee elected or appointed. If they are appointed, which I suspect they are, the town would need to seek special legislation to move the election on a biennial cycle. Other issues you'd need to consider are exactly as you describe, which is, she's talking about the description I gave her of the recall election. It is holding 2 separate elections on the same day, which means more workers and greater administrative challenges. This includes processing voters through 2 check-in lines and figuring out if they're qualified to vote in both elections. With the recall election, if any of you participated in that, I remember we went in, we checked in, we got the ballot for one of the elections, either the town one or the state one. We voted that, we went to check out, we checked out, we submitted our ballot. We went to a different check-in, we checked in, we got the ballot for the next election. We went to check out, we checked out, and then we cast the ballot for that election. So if you were there, you probably remember it, but that's the situation that you would have to do if you're combining a town and a state election. If they move within Massachusetts, if the registrant, if the voter moved within Massachusetts within 6 months before the state election and didn't re-register, they're eligible to vote in the state election, but not in the local election. So therefore the 2 different check-ins. People might be able to vote in one and not be able to vote in the other. Also, absentee ballots must be returned in separate inner envelopes for each election. So you'd have to have two of those coming in because they'd be different ballots going to different processing. If a voter returns both ballots in the same inner envelope, neither one counts. Since this issue is generally only discoverable on election day, that voter doesn't have their vote counted in either election. The UOCAVA voters, those are the overseas voters, are also a challenge since you have to send the federal ballots at least 45 days before the election, but you won't even have the local ones at that time and can't send them electronically. You can send the state ballots electronically. You can't send local ballots electronically. This generally leads to voter confusion as for timing, which also comes up since you likely have your state election absentee ballots way before your local election ballots. I hope this is a good start for your conversation with the committee. So that is her input. I added a few other things kind of because of the conversation last week. So our the elections, if we move them then, would always be on a Tuesday because that's when the state elections are always held on Tuesdays. Right now, our town election is on a Saturday. That allows us to set up at the school on Friday after classes are over and to get everything cleaned up before school comes back in on Monday. We'd be having the elections now with set up on Wednesday, or set up on Monday, the election on Tuesday, and we wouldn't be taking it down until Wednesday. So we'd be disturbing the school for 3 separate days. We have never, since I've been town clerk, we don't pay rental for the building. We don't pay electricity for the building. And the town now actually owns that the building where we have the elections. So that has never been a cost. Paying for the workers, however, is a cost. And so doubling staff would make a difference. And when we've had elections while school is in session, we've had to hire extra people for security because the school gets very concerned about strangers in the school with the kids. In terms, if we went to a biennial cycle, which is the way to do it if you're going to do it with the state elections, you'd have to change everything in the charter to match the 2-year voting cycle. So in other words, if you had people elected for 3-year terms, how would you elect them when elections are every 2 years? If we wanted to save money, I would recommend, because that was something that was mentioned last time, I would definitely recommend having shorter hours for our Saturday elections. The bulk of the voters come between 9 and 2. We get very few people who come after 2 before 8 o'clock at night. And of course, they can always vote absentee if they are not able to make the hours that we would be open. And that would be a huge money saver. I think that's about it. I'm happy to field any questions you have about that if it wasn't clear.
Okay. So on the surface, one might think that you would be saving a lot of costs by combining. Maybe that's not really the case. But in addition, you're creating additional complexities that we don't have today. Is that a fair statement?
Several additional complexities and considerable extra cost.
Extra cost, okay.
I would say extra cost because we'll have to have 2 sets of staff for everything for the check-ins and check-outs.
Yeah.
Because we won't be able to combine ballots on the table where they're being handed out. You wouldn't want to get them confused. People are going to have those big check-in lists. I don't know if the big check-in list that we have, we'll have to have different ones of those because there might be different voters in the state election and different voters in the town election, depending on when people have moved to town and when they've registered. So we would have to have 2 full staffs for each election, and there'd be 2 elections going on simultaneously. That makes sense.
All right, are any questions from the committee?
I don't have a question, but thank you, Marilee, for clarifying all that. It was incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
Sure. If you have any reason that you'd like to see Michelle's, my email to Michelle and Michelle's email back to me, if that's helpful for your records or anything like that, I'm happy to forward it to you. Just if that makes a difference.
Okay, thank you, Marilee. That really gave, I think, a good perspective that we didn't necessarily have. So that was really good. And while we have you, would you be able to take maybe a couple of minutes just to give us your quick perspective on the town clerk position?
Sure.
Okay.
You already know it, Ed.
The committee may not, though. So
I'll just keep repeating it. I am a strong supporter of the elected town clerk position. I am not saying I love to run for office. That is not the reason that I want an elected town clerk in Bridgewater. But I am happy to run for office because I want the people of Bridgewater to have their own representative as a town employee. There are no other town paid employees who work a full week who are elected or there simply because the citizens of the town have voted for them to be there. And I think that's an important thing. My predecessor felt strongly when the initial charter was written and put in an appointed town clerk, and he went to the bat at a town meeting and made sure that it remained elected. I will continue to do the same. I will continue to campaign to keep it the same if it ever goes to ballot. As far as I have been able to discern, the public very strongly supports having an elected town clerk. Perhaps they only just say that to me because I am an elected town clerk and that's what they say to me. But I will tell you, they are none too shy about telling me that they weren't happy to vote for me for state rep and they weren't happy to vote for me for selectmen. They don't seem to have any problem with telling me all the things they don't like about me. But being an elected town clerk isn't one of those things. So I just say that. I also have an editorial that I cut out last June 2nd of 2020. That was by a town clerk in the western end of the state. And the title of it was The Case for Elected Town Clerks. And I thought he put some of it very well. He says, the town clerks I know are service oriented and not concerned about punching the clock, allowing them to be more accommodating to their constituents, which is definitely true. I've gone down and performed weddings on Saturdays and Sundays. I've opened up the office in the evenings when people couldn't make it there to be sworn in during office hours or to get a marriage certificate or a dog license or a birth certificate or whatever they've needed. I live here in town. I live here in town. That's an important qualification. And I am a rarity among town employees. Most town employees, especially the hierarchy of the town, do not live in this town. They drive into town, park their cars, turn around and drive back out of town at the end of the day. I walk to work. I walk at least when I'm able to go into work. I walk 5 to 10 miles every day around this town. So I'm pretty well familiar with it. Back to this article. Many provide services out of their home during weekends and often help the panicked citizens who need a copy of their birth certificate, marriage certificate on a holiday weekend. Elected town clerks also bring their own strength and capacities and capabilities once voted into office, which represent a vote about the actual culture of the position. A position embedded in the town, administered by a person who is invested in the community and knows the residents and understands their needs, which often include personal issues entrusted to them. A trust earned only when given by the people. And he concluded, all of this gets down to the actual fiber of the matter that can only be accomplished by the people electing a town clerk. It is the people who should always retain the right to determine who that individual will be. And I love being that individual. I will love voting for an individual from Bridgewater. Another thing he mentions in the article is that there is no training for town clerk. When I was first elected, I knew nothing about the position. I took a week-long course going to the New England training for town and city clerks, and I learned nothing. It was basically a mini course of my master's in political communication, and it taught me nothing about being a town clerk. Everything I've learned has been on site, because when they train for all of New England, various states have their town clerks do various things. In some towns, they're the kind of like the health agent. They do all the death certificates and all the burial certificates and all those sort of things, which we don't do here. So there are many, many, many facets of the job that are individual, sometimes per town in Massachusetts, and definitely different among states. So for someone to say that they've taken training to be a town clerk, they have to have been a town clerk before. Because that's where you learn. I am both a city clerk and a town clerk. I belong to both organizations because I am, as you know, as you are well aware, I am a city clerk. I am not a town clerk. I'm called a town clerk. We call it that. But because Bridgewater is actually a city, I'm a city clerk. So anything in Mass General Law that says the town clerks will doesn't apply to me, doesn't apply to Bridgewater. I have to go and figure out what cities actually do. So I belong to the City Clerks Association. I belong to the Town Clerks Association. Both of those have private group lists that are online. So any question you have, you write it to that group. We are forbidden to ever share those emails outside of our group. It's totally private. The Secretary of the Commonwealth doesn't see it. Our town managers don't see it. We can ask, in other words, any stupid thing we want to ask, and we will get assistance from those who are more experienced and who know what's going on. That's our safety valve for all of us, to make sure that we are not making mistakes. And people write all day long back and forth to each other. Do you have a fillable marriage license? Do you have this? Do you have that? What did you do about this when your council did that? And everybody shares information. It's an easy way for us to get surveys done about what do you do about things in your town. So that's where the education really comes from. So if we have an elected town clerk and we want someone with a resume who shows that they know what they're doing as a town clerk or a city clerk, you're definitely not going to get somebody from Bridgewater. Because I'll pretty well guarantee you right now, there isn't anyone but me, Jolie Sprague Martin, and Christine Neems lives in Middleborough. Jolie Sprague Martin and I live in Bridgewater. And I don't think there are other experienced town or city clerks living in Bridgewater. I could be a little bit wrong, but I think I'm right. So you're not going to get someone who's going to be with a big resume and applying for the job who lives in Bridgewater. You're going to get another person who doesn't live in Bridgewater to be part of the hierarchy of the town in the department head category. So I'll let other people, I think later on, if you bring this up when there are time for citizen comments, I think some other citizens will have comments, but those are mine.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. Are there any questions from the committee? Cleone?
Hi, Marilee.
Hey,
Thank you for giving that that breakdown. I think that you're amazing, and my only concern is there'll come a time where you won't be in that position, and I wanted your perspective on how the town is protected since we can't clone you, and speaking specifically around HR issues, right? If there's someone that comes into your position and violates some, common workplace things that HR covers, sexual harassment or any other things, how is the town protected when someone is appointed?
You mean
I mean,
elected?
elected versus appointed.
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I interact with HR, but they aren't my boss. The people of Bridgewater are my boss. So kind of as with any elected official in any position in any government, we are this is a weird thing to say today. We are a government of ballots, not bullets. And when people aren't doing their job or when they are performing poorly, they can be recalled. If you write a recall thing into the charter, you've got to do that if you want to be able to do a recall on your elected positions. So they can be recalled and they can be voted out. And that's kind of the way it works in all of government that I know of, elected government. That's how it works for. And I imagine it's the same for me. I don't know. I haven't had anybody bring up any HR issues with me yet. So I don't know, is Jolie online? She was gonna, yeah, she is.
So how is the public made aware if there is, because sometimes some of these things are confidential. How are the community made aware of these kinds of issues that would make them informed to want to replace poorly functioning clerk?
I think, Cleone, the same way that you find out if your president, your representative, your senator, your whoever you've elected, your library board of trustees, if they aren't doing a good job, the same way you find out. There's press coverage. If you have press, which I understand, we don't really anymore in Bridgewater, but we got Facebook. So, okay, Bill, I'll just get you a little bit on this one, but not much. I'm just being funny. So if they post on Facebook that you didn't do your job, there's about 20,000 people on the Bridgewater residents Facebook that are going to know that same day. And I imagine if you get several of those, you're not going to be elected again, or people are going to come in and say, what's the matter with you and why don't you shape up? I think I've not found that people are shy about coming and telling you that you aren't doing or you are doing a good job. And so I think that's how you handle that. Now, the employees in the town clerk's office are town employees, and they are handled by the HR department. So even though it's kind of a hybrid, and I work very well and closely with Jolie and Christine and respect them greatly, and they have been very much my teachers in this job. They are employees under Michael Dutton, they're not mine to say, you don't have to work this week. Of course, we work out vacation schedules and everything, but they are union employees. And so they fall under that category. And I know that sounds like probably a weak answer, but I think it's the answer. I think it's the only answer I can give.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
I've got a question real quick. Marilee, thanks for coming in.
Sure, Scott.
Very, very informative. And as always, stuff that I didn't think of. My question is, you said Really, the only way to get qualified for this position is to do the job. And that essentially you and Jolie are the only two people in town that are qualified for the position, correct?
Well, I'd say that our experience in the position, and I could be wrong. Maybe there's somebody living in town who used to be a town clerk someplace, or who is a town clerk in another town. It's totally possible. I just don't know them. And to tell you the truth, I've been kind of looking for them because I don't want to do this job forever. And I do want to find somebody who's really good, who I could support in his or her election to the position.
Yeah, and I think that was my concern, is when you decide you're done with the position, there's only one other person qualified if we keep it as an elected position.
And she doesn't want to do it, because if she wanted to do it, I wouldn't be here, because I wanted her to
Remember that conversation.
I wanted her to be the town clerk. So I think that you have to look at it this way when you're talking about an elected town clerk. You look for someone who, the kids call it a humble brag. Okay, so that's probably what it's going to sound like. You look for someone who's intelligent enough to do the job, who has the right kind of personality to do the job, who wants to be outgoing and helpful and supportive to his or her community. Just like you do when you're electing a representative or a senator or a library trustee, you want people who have skills. These things require effort on the people's part. The people have to pay attention to who this person is, just like they should for their town councilors. You should care who your town councilors are. You should care how smart they are. You should care how educated they are. You should care how willing they are to learn the job and dig into it and put the time into it. And they're not even being paid. So that's the people's responsibility when they vote for representatives and elected officers. So I think that's what you have to look for, Scott. Certainly, there are plenty of talented, much more brilliant people than I am in Bridgewater who care about this community at least as much as I do and would be capable of doing this job. So I don't think there should be a lack of people who are able to be town clerk. I do think voters need to discern who is that person.
Any other committee members have a question?
Ed, procedurally, are we going to go, we're going to circle back to public forum?
Yeah, well, that's the next thing on the agenda.
Okay.
Yep, I just want to wrap up with this discussion on the town clerk. All right, if there are no more questions from Merrill Lee, Carlton's, we're just doing committee questions right now. Okay.
I thought you were going to public comment and I was raising my hand, sir.
I said that was the next thing on the agenda. I haven't closed out this discussion yet.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other comments from the committee? All right, Merrill Lee, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate your time, and your feedback was very valuable to us. All right, next item on the agenda is public comment. And I just want to set the ground rules again at the beginning here. We will be disabling the chat during the public comment, and everyone will be muted until I select you to speak. You'll be limited to 3 minutes discussion or whatever you need to say in 3 minutes, and there'll be no dialogue with the committee. Okay, we're trying to give everybody a chance to speak what they need to speak and move on with the agenda. So I think Mr. Wood had something he wanted to say first. So Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. First, I've got to say, as I said in the letter, I think that Merrill Lee and her staff does an amazing job as the clerk. We've been really lucky that someone like Merrill Lee decided to step up and run for the office. But in addition to the letter I sent last week, which hopefully everyone had a chance to take a look at and digest, you know, that the position shouldn't be political. It's usually only political during the election. And the election, of course, is a political activity, but the as I outlined in the letter, the functions of the office are well defined and should not be political at all in nature. As I also outlined in the letter, the objective is to find someone with managerial experience. Marilee pointed out that, yeah, there are training sessions and there's specific items about the holder of the office, but you want to find someone with managerial skills. Maybe that shows up during an election, maybe it doesn't. There is a recall provision that currently exists that could be used. I would imagine that would be extremely difficult to enforce. But I also believe that it's not really a representative of the people. It's a function that the town offers for all the things that the state says we have to offer. Vital records, death certificates, birth certificates, marriages, marriage certificates. All those functions are typical of a town hall. And if you do additional reading, you find that many, many towns and cities are switching over to the appointed. We looked, Marilee and I and others looked for that video from that meeting where Ron Adams stood up. Jim Moore seconded the motion at town meeting. And Ron had an amazing, because he was political, amazing following that got the language of the charter changed last time. The suggestion I made in the letter, I think works for all. It offers protection to the person holding the office and gives the ability to make a selection based on managerial experience, as well as other attributes that are important for the office. It's not a volunteer position. It's a professional position that needs professional skills. It makes professional money at almost $80,000. There could be health benefits involved and other benefits like that. And under the current charter, the council sets that salary range. We've adjusted it several times, and a couple times we've adjusted what the office is asked to do. So I think that if you take a look at the letter in detail, you may find an avenue that protects both the person in the office from any undue political influence, but also enables the town or city, as it may be, to find a selection in a person that fits the managerial experience that's needed for the requirement. Thank you for the time. I need to jump over to a different meeting, and Josh, I'll find the recording later on for the rest of the meeting. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Bill. All right, Carlton, are you still with us? Oh, he must have dropped. All right, Fred, you raised your hand. Would you like to speak? You have to unmute yourself.
That's helpful. Thank you very much. I'll be very brief, but on the subject of the town clerk, I'm of the opinion that the town clerk should remain an elected official of the town. And I'm well aware of the arguments that we'd heard that emanated from the results of the last charter review committee. There was some discussion about the fact that the town had somehow reached a magical point in population at 28,000 and therefore should be treated more like a city and should have an appointed city clerk. And there's also the argument that notwithstanding Marilee's competence, which is widely recognized, but how do we know that the next person coming forward from the town in an elected position would be so competent? Well, I think that Marilee made the case that, we entrust to the voters the ability to find competent people, to urge them to run for office, and then we evaluate their qualifications as we elect them at the ballot box. And I think that Marilee, better than any of us, can understand the point that she stressed that it really was a situation that she needed to learn the skills on the job, as it were. And I think that is not beyond the capabilities of an appropriate candidate from the town. The town clerk is really, in so many ways, the face of the community. And it's one of the first offices, really is the first office that one encounters when they enter the academy building. It's probably where most residents in town show up to ask a question when they really don't know where they should be going to ask a question. And I think it's extremely important that that person be a resident of the town, voted into office by the residents, by the voters of the town. I'll just close by saying I'm really quite adamant about this. And as a member of the town council currently, I will not look favorably, frankly, upon any recommendation that would cause the position of the town clerk to be changed to an appointed position. Just so that you know my intention in this regard, with all due respect to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Any other citizen? Adeline? You're on mute.
Yeah,
There you go.
sorry. I concur completely with Mr. Chase. I feel very adamantly that it should remain elected. In light of the events of today, which has been unspeakable, we need to have a town clerk that can ensure election integrity. And that means that we need to be able to ensure that we have a citizen that the people of Bridgewater have confidence in, that we trust the character of that individual, that we trust merrily, which we do. We need to have an individual that we have confidence in. And an election is the way to have a person that we have confidence in, that the community has confidence in. Having someone who is appointed, I feel, takes away the control from the community. And what is more important than the elections in our community? And our town clerk is the instrument by which town elections are conducted. What could be more important than the instrument of conducting our town elections? I feel very, very strongly that the town clerk must remain elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Adeline. Anyone else? Rebecca?
Thank you. I don't know that I can speak as eloquently as the others have, but I also concur with Mrs. Ellenberg and Mr. Chase. I think that the town clerk is directly accountable, should be accountable to the people who elect him or her, serving at the will of the people, not at the discretion of town managers. And in another difference is employees can be removed only with just cause, which would go through human resources and whatever route. Elected officials can be removed from office by the people at an election for any reason at all. So there are so many reasons beyond Marilee's individual skills, which we all know, why we should keep this position as an elected position. And as Mr. Chase said, there's no reason why we can't trust the people to to vote for a qualified candidate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Christina?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm also going to speak in support of what Mr. Chase, my neighbor Adeline, and what Rebecca has said also about the position that the position should be an elected position. We have so few elected positions in town now that the charter has changed. So few places where the voters of Bridgewater can raise their voices and indicate a choice. And I think it's very important for the town clerk to be one of them. Ron set a bar, Marilee set it higher. We know who and what we want in that position, the kind of person who can organize an election. In the year that we have had, no one could do the job as well, I think, as Marilee has done, or with this as seeming ease. I know behind the scenes there were moments, I'm sure, and as a volunteer the day of November 3rd, I saw the whole process very well thought out, very well implemented, and I think that's the kind of person that our voters would vote for. So I support that it remain a voted position.
Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that. Anyone else?
See Marilee's hand.
Yeah, I see Marilee. I'm just waiting to see if there's anyone else. Okay, Marilee, go ahead.
I just had a quick thing because I wrote a note here that I forgot to say. I think because of the way that Mass General laws are written, and because there's such a difference between the things town clerks need to do and city clerks need to do, it would really be helpful if you might want to consider just letting Bridgewater be called a city, since it is a city, we have to have special permission to call ourselves a town, and let the clerk be called the city clerk, so that it's clear what rules and regulations we're following. I mean, there are times that Jolie can tell you that I've been going by, this is what we've always done, this is how it's been, this is the Mass General law that covers us. And then I go and look at it and it says town clerks shall. And there's a different thing that city clerks shall. And when I first came in, one of those things was confused. And even the legal counsel had given wrong advice to Ron. And there was a situation where we weren't doing what we needed to be doing as a city. We weren't doing it as we had to do it as a town either. We had changed it, but we hadn't changed it the right way. And those are the sort of things that you can find from the group list that I belong to. And I just think it would clarify it, not just for me, I've kind of gotten used to it, but for a subsequent clerk to be able to be actually called a city clerk, since that's what he or she is going to be.
Okay.
No, shut up.
All right, thank you for that. Good point. All right, anyone else? If you can't think of anything right now, we'll have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. So I'm going to close out public comment for now. Thank you all for your input. Appreciate that. And we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is old business. And we're going to get right back into the charter. Article 3 is what we're working on right now. And the first item up on this is the section 3-1, employees holding elected positions. Scott has made some updates to his mock-up that he presented last week, and we're going to use that as a guide to kind of walk through these topics tonight. So Scott, you want to share your screen as you talk us through this?
Sure. And I just want to preface this by saying a lot of these things that I put in here are just to spark the discussion. I'm not beholden to anything out there, and I'm not going to pretend as if my position is the best possible position. I look forward to the discussion as we go forward. Let me go ahead and share my screen here.
Yeah, and thank you, Scott, for taking the time to do this. It's really helpful to have a stake in the ground to go from.
Let me see if I can get this right here. I had the town budget up in the background there. Can everybody see this okay?
Yes.
Is that big enough, or do I need to make it larger print?
That's perfect for me.
All right.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. So we started on 3-1, and we left off talking about eligibility of town employees to run for elected office or to be on a board, committee, or commission. And there were some public comments at the end of the last meeting that made some valid points, and I tried to address them in this revision here. Matter of fact, I should have highlighted all of this here. That's all part of the substantive change. As I thought about it going forward, my position has been, initially was, if you have a town employee who is otherwise eligible to serve on a board, committee, commission, or to run for elected office, and the voters want that person, then, similar to the discussions with about the elected town clerk, that, the voters should have that ability. But it does pose that problem of, if you have a town employee that gets elected to the town council, granted, no individual council member is the town manager's boss. It's the council collectively that is the town manager's boss. But there is that conflict that does exist there. So that does pose a problem. However, the way the charter is worded now, where it's essentially a complete ban on any town employee and even school district employees from holding one of these offices, to me seemed like a nuclear option. It seemed a bit overkill. Why should an administrative assistant in the school committee not be able to be a member of the Conservation Commission, serve in some other capacity that has absolutely no relation to their full-time employment? They just want to help out the town that we all love. So I tried to strike some sort of a balance with my language here. Essentially, starting here at line 17, is the outright ban on town employees serving on the town council, just because of that inherent conflict that does exist. And then the third paragraph here on for number 18 essentially says, and what I'm trying to capture here, and we can refine this if need be, but any other town employee, or I could put in there school district employee, might be something we want to add in there, who wants to be on a board, committee, or commission, or run for an elected office, would then have to seek an opinion from the town attorney stating that there is no conflict with oversight, direction, or control of anyone within their chain of command or their budget or anything like that. And that's where I'm at with this. That's what I came up with, and I'm very interested to hear the rest of the committee's thoughts on this.
Okay. Well done, Scott, on this. I think you've tried to achieve a balance here, which looks like it's got some value. So who would like to speak about this from the committee? Any
I'll start if I don't echo too much. So I kind of agree with Scott. Like, my initial opinion was, I don't see why someone, I'm going to use his example, on the conservation committee can't be on a different committee or work for the town. If it's solely for the benefit of helping the town. But after there was some email correspondence that we received and thinking about it more, I do see the unfortunate but necessary restriction on it. And that's just kind of where I'm at this point, at least my opinion. So, yeah.
So you're saying, I think, Tom, at least from what I understand, you're leaning towards keeping the original text.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I like to think everybody does the right thing for the right reason. I've become less confident about that in the last 6 hours. So I think if you have to put something in like this, it has to be there. So I would vote leave it at this point.
Okay.
If I can comment, Janet.
Yeah, good, Janet.
On this, I can see when Scott said, okay, somebody on the school committee, for instance, wants to be on conservation. On the surface, I say, yeah, that wouldn't necessarily show a conflict. But if you've attended some of these meetings and doing stuff, the problem is who's going to decide, or you're going to have to really do a lot of check and balancing and going, there's a lot of steps. You're going to have to say, okay, if you're on this committee or you were employed by this portion, and then you want to be on this committee, are we going to have it? So who's to decide? I know you have the town attorney in there to decide, but it could get complicated. And like Tom said, it's unfortunate that somebody who really wants to be on something but is employed can't. But, there's a lot of gray area that you're going to have to follow and make sure that there isn't any problems. And I would say because of that, I would lean more to, you can't be on something if you're employed by the town.
Okay. Thank you, Janet. Darren?
I wouldn't see much of a problem with it, but the thing I'd be concerned about is who would determine the conflict of interest. I mean, right now it was mentioned the town attorney, but and I would think should be more of a group of people would determine if there was a conflict of interest.
Ed, if I could, much of the conflict of interest issues are addressed by state law. And the town attorney would simply look at, I added this extra language in there because the state conflict of interest law really addresses mostly either the appearance of a conflict of interest, and it talks really more towards financial gain or potential for financial gain. And I wanted to make sure that we didn't have any sort of possibility to have, say, a firefighter having some sort of oversight over the fire chief, problems like that. And that's why I put in the language about oversight, direction, or control. Or, having anything to do with the budget or anything like that. Really what I'm trying to capture here are, if that firefighter wanted to be on the library board of trustees, you'd be hard pressed to find a conflict of interest there. We have a lot of boards, committees, and commissions that are in dire need of volunteers that we just can't get. So if we have the opportunity to expand the pool of candidates for these positions, then I think we should take a look for it.
So that brings me to a question, and it kind of builds off Darren's question. Is there a way, and this is not a charter thing, I don't think, but would there be a way to predetermine and list out who, if you hold a position in this department, you are allowed to serve on the following committees or charter or what have you, and vice versa? So if you're in the highway department, you can't serve on this, but you can serve on this. Or is that just too much of an ask?
I thought about doing that as I was drafting this, and it was very cumbersome.
Oh, I'm sure.
To go into the charter. That may be something more along the line that, the town manager may want to put together. If this language goes through, the town manager could say, okay, if you're an employee of this department, these are the committees that you are ineligible to serve on. Something to that effect.
Well, that's a good point. Maybe we could actually make reference in the charter to an ordinance or something that would be provided in the administrative code or something.
That could prove cumbersome in that the ordinances can be amended and changed much more readily than the charter can. And if that ordinance is changed, it may make any language in the charter referencing it, it wouldn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
It just is, it becomes more complicated by changing the wording. That's the only thing is there's a lot of checks and balances that have to be done. Whereas if you just leave it as is, you don't. And I get what Scott's saying, but what's going to work the best and easiest for the town? Is it going to make more problems, more work, more overseeing, and leaving it just to a town attorney? There's more to it than that. And it would be nice if we can do it, but there's a lot more to it that the town may not want to do.
Right, but because something is difficult is not a reason to not do it.
I know I'm not wording it right, but it's, there's there's a issue, there's a chance for problems, and you have to look at like listing, like I said, okay, list, all right, the firefighters can go on this, but they can't go on this. And, it's,
Yeah.
there's more to it. And that's the only thing I'm concerned about is how do we implement it so that everything is handled in the up and up.
So, I mean, maybe my opinion on how to do that, like so the charter's the big document, right? Like it to Scott's point, it doesn't have to be overly cumbersome. It's a yes or no level. And I mean, from there, it could say on an annual basis, the town council shall approve a list of committees that town employees may serve on. That way, as new committees are developed, they're added or deleted. And yes, it would be a heavy lift up front, but then to Scott's point, like you now have opened the opportunity to have more civic engagement from people long term. So yeah, the first year or two might, pardon the language, suck, getting it all together, making, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. But if long term it opens opportunity for people to become involved in the town, it seems like a win. With the caveat that, it's reviewed and updated as needed.
So am I correct
I'm not
that
trying to
we're
argue with you either, Janet. I'm just, talking it out.
Me too.
So this discussion is really helpful. I can't help but to feel that there's this underlining assumption that if folks are not able to serve on a committee or an advisory board, that their voice isn't able to inform decisions. But isn't it the case that as community members, there is a mechanism for them to voice and influence change by attending meetings such as this? And one of the common threads I'm hearing, both when we talk about the town clerk and in these situations, there needs to be, community education, right, to have more involvement. And my concern here is, are we trying to fix a problem but not address the root cause, that we don't have a lot of community members engaged in these committees, and so we're doubling up on people that are, whether they're employees or serving in a different capacity. So is there not if we do decide that an employee cannot serve on a committee, is there not a way for them to lend their voice to the process that's being considered under committees?
I think they obviously can comment. I'm not sure it carries, I don't want to say carries the same weight, because it should, but it's often not.
Yeah, they would basically do what citizens are doing with us, is attending meetings and giving input. But they would not be actively engaged in any decision-making on that committee. So I guess the question is, why would they want to be involved if they can only voice their opinion? They don't really have an active role. So I think what we're trying to do here is we're trying to say, does it make sense, given the fact that many of the committees and boards in town already struggle with getting volunteers, and the fact that we have been notified through the survey as well as the town employee questionnaire that there are employees that are interested in serving in other capacities in the town, and some of those have certain skills and abilities that the town would receive value from by having them support some of these committees. So is there some way we can accommodate that but still maintain some level of check and balance, that everybody feels comfortable that something's not going to go awry here? We certainly don't want an employee being elected to the town council. And Scott's addressed that here. The next question is, since we haven't gone through every single scenario, meaning every single employee and all the different kinds of boards and committees there are, and kind of talk through all those scenarios, since we haven't done that, nor will we be able to do that, this other paragraph that he put in here sort of deals with that. But as Tom said, maybe every year the town council has a list that they maintain. And that's the list that town employees can be appointed to. Could be appointed to those committees, as long as the council feels comfortable with it.
Now, why do you think it should be the town council rather than the town manager or the town attorney that creates that list?
Right, you go.
No, go ahead, Tom.
I would say it's more people and the elected nature of those individuals. In theory, they do what Cleone was looking for, is speak on behalf of their constituents. So if they collectively decide, it might not appear that there is a conflict here, or there's potential for issue. If they collectively see that, that's a reason to strike it. And it could end up being the most ridiculous list ever, where, and I don't want to harp on the firefighter example, but the firefighters are only allowed to be on one committee and they can't be on the other 45 that we have. But I have no issue with the town manager being involved in that. It could say, the language could be the town council in conjunction with the town manager and approval by the town attorney. I have no issue with that.
Yeah, I guess one thing, Tom, is what criteria is whoever's making that decision, whether it's the council, the manager, or whoever, what criteria are they going to use to determine which committees are the right committees or not?
I have my opinion on that. If there's a financial line or a work line tie, instantly cross it off, or impact on long-term plan, cross it off, of particular department versus what have you. Those are easy ones. I think it would take more research. And again, this is not something I think would have to go into the charter, because I think the charter would establish either the prohibition of or the allowing of this to happen. And then the administrative code is what's going to have to be enhanced to execute that.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, I tried to capture that with this language here.
Yep.
That it can't be a position having oversight, direction, or control over any aspect of their town employment, their supervisors, or department.
Yep.
So I think that would capture everything that Tom just said.
Yep. That's good. Okay. Well, I think personally, Scott, you've done a good job here, kind of capsulizing, what needs to what needs to be said to maintain some level of check and balance. Now it's just a question of are we in a position now to vote? And
actually,
go ahead, Cleone.
So I actually like what Tom was saying, that instead of relying strictly on the attorney affirming it, can we put language in there that based on the recommendation or endorsement of the town manager and the council, just to make sure that there's more eyes looking at that conflict of interest. Can we expand that to include both the town manager and town council, or one or the other, in addition to the attorney?
I don't see why not. I just, go ahead, Scott.
I'd be more comfortable with town council in conjunction with the town attorney.
Yeah, me too.
Rather than, if you have an employee who wants to do something and then, not that I see it happening with this town manager, but, we've all worked in places where somebody who didn't get along with the boss just could never get permission to do anything. So I think leaving it with the town council in,
I like that. Town
working in consultation with the town attorney.
I like that.
You want to change that right now, Scott?
Yeah. So how about right here, without first obtaining
concurrence or
approval from the town council. Although, yeah, if we do approval from the town council in consultation with the town attorney, The town
Yeah.
council can delegate that to a committee.
Yeah. Okay,
How does that look?
good. Comma after attorney.
Thank you. And while I'm unmuted, I will say Cleone really touched on earlier, really the crux of the issue. We have a town of 28,000 people, and we still struggle to get more than one candidate for an elected office.
Yep.
I think there is a bigger issue there that is beyond the scope of this committee, but it's definitely something that needs to be addressed within this town. And I mean, I know it's not just Bridgewater, but it's definitely something that needs to be considered.
Right. And I guess because we've noted section 2-1 in here, are we saying that these people, what if somebody's not a resident? Because not all of our Bridgewater employees are residents. Do we want to limit people who are on committees and boards to be residents?
I do.
I think the committee and boards dictate that, right? Don't they
Yeah.
have a eligibility criteria that would include needing to be a Bridgewater resident?
They may. I can't say for sure. Do we want to be sure and just put something in here that says Town of Bridgewater employees who are residents?
That's captured right here. Oh, wait, I didn't transfer the language, but in the second paragraph, who would otherwise be eligible to serve.
Yeah, that's in section 2-1D, I think, isn't
Right.
it, or not? It's part of eligibility for elected office. You have to be a resident of the town.
Right. So I can copy this language and just insert it here. So it covers both paragraphs.
Good.
And that just brings it all together.
Okay.
So I, Scott Pidham, move to adopt the highlighted language from lines 12 through 19 of section 3-1 as presented.
Is there a second?
Give me 1 second. So the only thing, I'll wait for the discussion, I guess.
There's nothing at 19 though, right?
There's nothing on 19. Yeah.
Okay.
So can I, at point of clarity, the only thing that I don't see in here is like the annual review of that.
What does that mean? Of
So,
what?
so like the annual review of the town attorney and or council's approval of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable from an attorney? Or are we talking anybody that's a town employee has to on an individual basis get approval?
Yes.
Yes, I think, because if you try to go through every board, committee, and commission and look at every town employee position, that's a heavier lift than, you know, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen town employees that say they want to, you know, a firefighter wants to be on the library board of trustees. You know, that's a simple, you know, up or down, yes or no. Does it make sense?
Gotcha. All right.
Okay, we have a motion pending a second.
I will now second.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Any further discussion?
I just want to make sure I understood what Tom was saying. I was reading while you chimed in. Were you asking about like an annual recertification that a conflict of interest does not exist? Is that what you were talking about?
So like if I don't want to use the charter review committee because it doesn't meet every year. But like yes, an annual re-stamping of approval, because their position may have slightly changed within a department or what have you. And what kind of method is there to make sure that once they get a stamp of, hey, you can be on this committee, they can't just sit there forever.
I would think that that would be an HR issue, that the employees, all the employees are tracked in the HR database or whatever. And if somebody's going to be on a committee, then that would be a flag that they would have to be reviewed. So that might be something that, would be added to the HR list of things to do.
But Tom said it and I thought of it. What if somebody does change they work in one place in the town and then they switch over and they're working in another place? But they're on this committee, how is that going to be looked at to make sure that they still now can serve on that committee? Where is the check and balance on that? You know what I'm saying? If they move from, I can't think of a.
So, yeah, that's
in this department, now they're working in this, but they're on this committee, but this department isn't good for this committee. How do they, who follows up on that? How would that be followed up on?
So that's another good process question, Janet, and there are probably many more that as a committee, it's not our job to answer all those process questions. We're basically saying, this is what we want to see happen in the town. And then so this is kind of the what. We're defining the what. The how's behind this, all the I's that need to be dotted and the T's that need to be crossed will be handled subsequent to the charter. I'm not saying they're not good questions. They are good questions, but it's not our job to answer all those in the charter.
Yes.
So I just making sure that is not creating a problem by what's written in the charter.
Yeah. Okay.
So based on what you're saying, Ed, requiring an annual recertification is more of a implementation of what we're saying here and is not appropriate for the charter? Or is it that we feel that it's not a necessary step?
I think that would be codified in the administrative code, probably. There might be an ordinance that would deal with that. I mean, we could say it in here if we wanted to. I don't think it's necessarily needed, but if the committee feels comfortable that says a yearly review or for certification, how are we going to say who that's going to be performed by?
That, I think the who of it performing that would probably be the administrative thing. That language is pretty popular on the federal level when I was working for the federal government. So it's not something that I find to be unreasonable to ask that, because what would happen is the person who wants to continue to serve would be the one that initiates that, and they would circulate it based on whoever originally confirmed that there wasn't a conflict, and it would be a certificate that would be issued and would have an expiration date of a year.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I think Ed's point is that's something you would find in a statute or an administrative code somewhere. You wouldn't find it in the Constitution. The charter is the town constitution. It's really a much, one over the world type of a scope. And I think that's what Ed was getting at when he said, that's more of the how it's done.
Yeah. I mean, we could, this is splitting hairs here, but we could say something at the very end of line 18, a yearly certification or a yearly review or certification will be performed by the HR director. And just leave it at that.
Actually, instead of the HR director, I would probably just leave it open because at this moment, we're not sure who's the most appropriate person to determine if there's a conflict or not. Because right now we have it as the town council and the town attorney. Mm-hmm. Would it be unreasonable for them to go back to those two bodies to recertify and say, yes, if this request was made today, I still consider it a non-conflict?
Okay. So just something like a yearly recertification
And
Is required or something?
What if we were to say first obtaining annual approval? Would that cover it?
Say that again, Darren?
If we said something like first obtaining annual approval from town council,
I think that fixes it, Darren.
I'm not following how that gets into a yearly recertification.
Because it requires annual approval from the town council in consultation with the town attorney. And they can say, and the first one might take a little bit longer, but year two, they're like, well, hey, Ed was already on this committee and holds this position. Nothing's changed. Check, move on.
Oh, okay. Now I get it.
I think that fixes it in 7 characters.
So without first obtaining prior and annual approval?
I added prior in there, just to make it clear they had to get it before and then every year thereafter.
I like it.
All right, so now we gotta amend the motion.
All right.
Tom, you need to retract your second.
I retract my second.
Okay.
All right. So I'll retract my initial motion. I'll make a new motion to approve the language as it appears on the screen now from lines 12 through 18 through 18.
I second it again.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Ed, procedurally, sorry. It was Scott Pitta, myself, who made the motion.
Yeah.
And,
we know who you are.
Yes, but it's being recorded, so I'm just
right.
Okay. You're supposed to announce. Tom, if you could announce your second.
Yep, I, Tom Golden, second the motion. Sorry.
Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, then Josh, you back on?
Yes. Yep. I'm here.
All right. Need a roll call on this?
Sure. Ed?
Yes.
Cleone?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Janet?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Darren?
yes.
Steve?
Steve's not here.
There is a Steve.
Oh, okay. Is that our Steve? He just unmuted himself.
Okay, we good?
so was there any public comment on this before the vote?
No, Adeline, we have 2 public comments per meeting, and one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end of the meeting. That's it. Just like the town council has.
And the motion was approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving down, Scott, the next item, I believe, was the date change.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
For my clarification, if you go back up, Scott, can you go up there for a second? We didn't do anything with line, the beginning of this line, was it line 1? We didn't do anything with above that, right? Did we? Line 5 through 10, we didn't do
No,
anything.
we haven't gotten into that yet. That was
Just
the
making-
language about elected town clerk and appointed town clerk. Really, that discussion comes in later.
Okay, I just making sure I didn't miss
Yeah.
something.
Good question. Good question. Thank you. In my head, I know it's a bigger discussion and we have more verbiage further on in the draft here. Going forward, in light of everything that Marilee enlightened us on earlier, I'm retracting my suggestion for the date of the elections. And the proposed resolution, I'm retracting that. If somebody wants to make that motion, then by all means feel free, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Let's see. Now coming down in here.
Let me just ask a question. Is anyone on the committee feel differently than what, we feel like we want to keep the same language, correct? Keep the same date.
Yep.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. All right. I don't think we need to vote on that because we're not changing anything. So, all right, moving down to library trustees.
All right, library trustees. The first change I had in here was Sorry, this should not be stricken. The term of office, the staggered 3-year term, staggered terms 3 years each. The original language says beginning on the second Monday following the election, which gives essentially after losing an election, if you're the incumbent, if you lose an election, you stay on for 2 weeks or a week and a half, whatever it is. It just seemed a little odd. I think beginning the day following the election, I mean, granted, okay, you've got to go to the town clerk's office, get sworn in, but there's no reason why you can't do that. You know, get in there and start getting to work if you were just elected.
Yeah, it may have been in there originally that way, just to handle any transition activities that might need to happen, but that's probably not something that's required. Okay, so you've got it written here as beginning on the day following the election for 3 years.
Continuing until the successor is qualified.
Oh, fine. Yep. Okay.
So I'll move to adopt that language on lines 31 to 32. I, Scott Pitta, move to adopt the language in the draft, lines 31 to 32.
So second.
I, Darren Boston, second the motion.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Any further discussion on this? Okay, we're voting, Josh, on section 3-2B. That's a roll call.
Ed,
Yes.
Cleone,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion was approved.
Thank you. Now, what Scott has done here is he's inserted the resolutions that were provided and discussed by Matt last week. So they're in here. I don't think you made any changes to them, Scott. Maybe you did, but I'm assuming you did not.
I did not.
Okay.
So what we have here for section C is the original section C up top. And then this is the section C that the library trustees passed in a resolution and forwarded along to us as the language they would like to say. So to start the discussion, I, Scott Pitta, move to adopt the Board of Library Trustees language for paragraph C.
Is there a second?
I just want a moment to reread.
I do like your comment, Scott, about adding ministerial as well.
I
To the
think that
definitions.
was, I can't take credit for that. That was Carlton Hunt.
Okay.
So that was his comment from last meeting.
Okay. All right, still waiting for second.
I, Darren Boston, second the motion.
Thank you, Darren. Any further discussion on this particular section, which is what,
Yeah, 3-2C.
3-2C. If not, then Josh, need a roll call on this one.
Ed,
Yes.
Cleone,
Yeah.
Tom,
I have to abstain.
Janet,
Okay.
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Thank you. In case anybody's wondering about Tom, I think you can let everybody know why you're
Yep.
abstaining.
So I said it last week as well. My wife is on the library board of trustees, so any significant changes to them, I'm recusing myself from that input.
Okay, thank you. All right, next, Scott.
Right, so next was paragraph D, filling of vacancies. The language about the appointment shall be approved by, I believe it said will be approved by the town council. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that conflicts with the prior language about the town manager making appointments to fill vacancies within the charter. This
For
really
elect-
just
So
brings,
but this is an elected position?
yes.
Okay,
So essentially, if there's a position that's vacant for whatever reason, rather than the town council simply approving, the question is, how do we want to do this? Do we want to have the town council select somebody? Or do we want the Citizens Advisory Committee selecting somebody, making a recommendation to the town manager, who then makes a recommendation to the town council, which is the traditional way of filling an appointed position or a vacancy?
to be honest with you, I tend to like the idea, since this is an elected body, I like the idea of having another elected body do the appointment rather than the town manager doing it. That's just my opinion.
Scott, can you walk us through again? You said it pretty quickly, at least for me, how it's currently done?
So when there's a position that needs to be filled with an appointment, the people that are interested in the appointment they submit their application or their letter of intent or whatever to the Citizens Advisory Committee. The Citizens Advisory Committee then conducts the interviews and makes recommendations to the town manager as to who they believe should be selected. And then from there, the town manager makes a selection, and that goes to the town council, and then the town council ratifies the town manager's selection. So it's a straight up or down vote.
All right, thank you.
Scott, is that just for boards and committees though?
I believe it's for anything the town manager, for any appointed position.
Yeah, so we didn't have to go through that process. We submitted, as a committee, we submitted our
Right,
things directly to the town council.
right.
And that's because that's the way the charter identifies it.
Right.
So the question is whether the library, any vacancies on the library trustees go through the quote unquote normal process that all the boards and committees go through. Or we say that basically the town council has authority to make appointments to fill any vacancies directly.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Ed, it does make sense in that if it's a position that's normally an elected position, that the town council steps in as the representatives of the people to elect that position. So that would make sense, and it follows logically.
Okay, so how would that look in the sentence here? Appointments.
Then it would be, does anybody have the original language on this? I believe it said shall be approved by the town council.
Hold on a minute, I'm looking it up. The appointments will be approved by the town council.
Okay, but the question here is who. Okay, so the library trustees have 30 days from the date the vacancy is declared to act to appoint to fill the vacancy. So that's not what this actually says. So what we were just talking about is not what occurs under the existing charter. Under the existing charter, the library trustees then select the member. Am I reading that the same as everybody else? And that after the library trustees select the person, then the town council has to approve them.
Yes. And I believe that's the way it is in the current charter.
Yep.
So nothing, basically nothing's changing then.
Okay, yeah, and then if it goes beyond 30 days, then the town council steps in.
Yeah. Okay, so you want to take the yellow off of that now, right?
Yeah. If anybody else has a different opinion, then, you know, by all means, but yeah, Ed, you changed my mind.
Okay. All right, moving down to item E, collections.
Item E, this would be a new addition. The original charter ends after section D. And this is the Board of Trustees resolution, what they are asking for to be included. So rather than I do all the talking, I'll sit back, let everybody reacquaint themselves with it. And is anyone interested in making a motion to adopt? Everybody caught up?
Yep.
Is there anyone interested in making a motion to adopt section E?
Yeah. Darren Boston, make a motion to adopt section E.
Okay, is there a second?
I
Scott,
Tina Nansen second.
there we go. All right.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, Josh, this will be a roll call on section 3-2E.
Ed,
Yes.
Cleone,
She's still on?
I don't see her actually. I see her on phone, but no video.
All right. Who's next?
Can you
Josh?
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, I'm having internet problems. I can hear you perfectly fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Tom,
Abstain.
Janet,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay. Hey, Steve.
Hey, how are, hey, just real quick, I just saw that the word director wasn't capitalized. Does that need to be capitalized? I thought the last sentence on page 10. The fifth sentence or fifth word from the end.
Good catch. Okay, moving down to F.
Okay. F talks about gift property. So again, I'll give everybody a minute here.
Somebody's ready to make a motion, please go ahead and do so.
I, Scott Pitta, move to adopt paragraph F as shown.
Okay, is there a second?
Steve Purcell, second.
Thank you, Steve. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, Josh, you'll need a roll call on 3-2F.
Okay, Ed,
Yes?
Leone,
Can you hear me?
yes.
I'm going to have to abstain because I don't have a visual. My internet is down. I just have audio.
Tom,
Abstain.
Janet, Janet,
Sorry. Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thanks, Josh. All right, moving on to G.
Underneath G, I've provided some additional language that I would like to include. The highlighted portion is what originally came to us from the Board of Trustees. And essentially, it just says what we talked about last week. In hiring a library director, the Board of Trustees need to have, will have some sort of an input to make a recommendation to the town manager. But if the town manager selects a candidate and the Board of Trustees does not provide any recommendation in 30 days, the town manager can proceed without any recommendation.
So this recommendation you're talking about here is based on a recommendation that the town manager has already submitted to the Board of Trustees?
Yes, the way I read it, the town manager selects a candidate and the town manager would then seek a recommendation from the Board of Trustees.
That's not how I read G. Are you talking about G?
Yes.
It's a library director shall only be hired upon the town manager receiving a written recommendation from the Board of Trustees. So it's the Board of Trustees giving the town manager a recommendation. And it's not the town manager giving them the recommendation. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
Well, the question is who does the interviewing and the hiring?
Well, it sounds like the process begins with the library trustees submitting a recommendation to the town manager.
Right.
And then he provides the term length and renewal conditions.
Right. The town manager may only renew or extend the contract. So I'm not sure that your verbiage, Scott, applies here since it's the library trustees that initiate the process.
Okay, I was reading this very differently, and I think we had discussed it a little bit last week as far as the process of actually hiring the library director.
Well, the first sentence, the library director shall only be hired upon the town manager receiving a written recommendation from the Board of Library Trustees.
Right.
So if they don't send a recommendation, then nothing has been started.
Right.
So if they don't give him a recommendation within 30 days, then then it falls to the manager to make a recommendation. I think that's how we had discussed it. If they didn't have, because they can't take 6 months to find somebody, they should have a time limit. So, but.
Right. Reading it that way, 30 days might not be enough time, though, to find a suitable candidate, conduct interviews.
Right. So that paragraph, that one that you typed in, doesn't really go with above.
Right, right. Yeah, essentially what I'm trying to capture here is that setting some sort of a time limit for the trustees to take action on this. And what would that time limit be?
30 to 60 days is fine.
60 days? 30 may be too short, 60 days.
And we're saying if the trustees cannot provide a recommendation within, say, 60 days, then the town manager can act on his or her own?
Essentially, yes. And, I'm concerned that, 30 days is definitely too short to have a volunteer board
Yeah, right.
conduct,
Right.
job interviews, screen candidates, conduct job interviews, select a candidate and make a recommendation. So 30 days, I think, would definitely be too short.
Right.
I'm even concerned that 60 days may be too short. I remember the process of the town council trying to hire an interim town manager. And that was very challenging to get everything done within the time limits.
So you want to make it 90 days?
I think 90 days might be appropriate. I don't know.
So basically what we're saying then is if the trustees do not send a recommendation to the town manager within 3 months, 90 days, then the town manager will hire someone regardless, right?
Yes. 90 days from the date. Trying to think how to create a starting date. From the date the position becomes vacant.
Yeah.
But you need to change the beginning of that sentence because
I would still want the committee to endorse, even if they weren't the ones that originally found the new director. I would still look to have them endorse the director that the town manager is putting forth.
the town manager can make their recommendation at that point, but it still should.
Yeah, that would kind of defeat that purpose of having the town manager just fill the position.
Well, aren't they stepping in because the trustees weren't unable to find someone qualified? And if they are more resourceful, say they have a stronger, robust network that they can post the postings and, throw a wider net, I would want them to be able to chime in at some point within that process.
I think what you've got written here, Scott, is adequate, to be honest.
I have a problem with the beginning of the sentence, though. Should the library board of trustees fail to provide a written recommendation, you need to remove either in support or opposition to the selected candidate because they're the ones who are making the recommendation, not
Right.
opposition to who. I think that should be removed
Okay.
because then it would go with what's above.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Janet.
Yeah. Cleone, to your point, I think the recommendation after the fact would be either in support of or opposition to from the Board of Trustees. Once we get into the second paragraph, would be from the Board of Trustees to the Town Council, who would then have to ratify the appointment. And I think that's how that would be addressed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, on that last sentence, right above in G, it says the town manager may only renew or extend the employment contract or the library director. Is that supposed to be of the library director?
Yes,
Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have a motion to adopt the language now as it appears for paragraph G?
You want to highlight that in yellow? Thank you.
The bolded portion is the additional above and beyond what the board of directors had in there,
Okay.
the board of trustees.
Steve
Look-
Purcell moved to adopt G of, I forget what paragraph this is.
3-2.
3-2.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any further discussion?
Did we have a second?
We did, Steve Purcell.
Oh, Steve said, okay, thank you.
I thought Steve was the.
I
Steve made the
I
motion.
motioned.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
you did?
Yeah, I,
Uh,
Darren Boston, second the motion to adopt G.
Okay, thank you, Darren.
Sorry about that. All right, no, roll call. Josh?
Ed,
Yes?
Cleone,
Yes.
Tom,
Abstain.
Janet,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes,
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, item H.
Right. Item 8 talks about duties of the treasurer in regard to the property of the library. And this really sort of goes along with the paragraphs above. If there's no questions, then I, Scott Pitta, move to adopt paragraph H.
I, Janet, second the motion to adopt paragraph H.
Thank you, Scott and Janet. Any further discussion? Okay, Josh, roll call, please. This is section 3-2H.
Ed,
Yes.
Cleone,
Yeah.
Tom,
Abstain.
Janet,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
yes,
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you. Item-
Finally, paragraph I.
Yep.
The annual report requirement. I left the quotation marks in there. I'll take that out. And I like this as a nice little accountability measure.
Mhm.
I, Scott Pitta, move to adopt paragraph I.
Steve Purcell seconded.
Thank you. I guess my only question is, do you want to put a date or do you care? Just say they can decide when.
It'd probably be best if we had a date in there. Do the town. You want to do with the fiscal year?
Yeah, that sounds good. So that's July, right?
Yes, July 1.
Okay.
Ed, is there any chance I could say something quickly?
Yeah,
Annual reports are already due to the town clerk. Not fiscal ones, but you might want to have it be on the same schedule. I don't know. Anyway, it just might be easier for them. So they already have an annual report due every January 1st.
Thank you, Marilee.
All right, so it's due January 1st. Change it to January 1st.
That's fine.
Same schedule.
Yeah.
if there's an annual report already due, rather than confusing terms, change it to annual fiscal report. That way it's a different term. Because this one only talks about receipts, expenditures, receipts and expenditures of property in the custody and control.
Okay, that's fine, yep. All right, so we have a amended or modified motion here.
I retract my second.
Thanks, Steve.
I'll retract my motion and make another motion to adopt the new language of paragraph I as it appears.
I, Steve Purcell, second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, Josh, we're voting on 3-2I.
Ed,
Thank you. Yes.
Cleone,
Yes.
Tom,
Abstain.
Janet,
Yes,
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ed, I see the time is 7:53. This looks
Yep.
like a natural breaking point.
I would agree. So we will continue next meeting with the recall provision. And thank you, Scott, again for putting this together. We'll just pick up here next time. I'd like to close this agenda item. Steve, if you can, Scott, if you can stop sharing your screen.
Can we make public comment?
I'm just going to announce that, Adeline. So we'll move into the public comment section now. And Adeline, you raised your hand first, so go ahead.
Yeah, I did not want to interrupt on the prior section, section 3.2, section G, library director. After the word, the second paragraph, after the word vacant, if you were to put that back up, Scott.
So Adeline,
Yes,
we appreciate your feedback, but it's the committee's job to work through the charter.
okay.
We're not allowing the public to,
To comment, well, there's something that doesn't make sense. So I just wanted to recommend that a few words be cut out.
well, you can just verbalize that now then, because we're not going to be going through the charter with
Okay.
each individual person.
Okay, after the word vacant, comma, cut out the words of the town manager request for recommendation. Cut, and then proceed with the rest. It doesn't make sense the way it reads right now, that's all.
Okay, we'll consider that. We already voted on it, but we'll have to go back and reconsider that. Thank you for your
Thank you.
input.
Ed, sorry to interrupt here. If you could just state your name and your address right before you comment as well.
Oh, okay, Adeline Ellenberg, and I would have brought it up during the discussion, but public comment was not allowed at that time.
Okay, and what was your address?
Oh, 76 Aldrich Road, Bridgewater.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adeline. All right, any other citizens that would like to speak? Matt, you have your hand raised?
Yes. Matt Garrettson, 941 Plymouth Street, Bridgewater, Mass. Secretary for the Board of Library Trustees. Thank you very much for taking all the comments that we submitted. Appreciate you guys addressing them. The annual report requirement for the Board of Trustees is one of the general law statutes that don't apply to the city form of government. So there is not an annual reporting requirement right now for the Board of Trustees. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Marilee?
Yes, it's true that the annual report isn't a city requirement, but it is a requirement in Bridgewater. It's written in the administrative code, and I publish it every year. So it's still required of all town departments. I just thought it would be easier for the Library Board of Trustees to do them both at the same time. Thanks.
Thanks, Marilee. Anyone else? Christina?
Yes, I had a thought while you were going through the
Sorry to interrupt.
town employees. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Christina Ajemian, 221 Aldrich Road here in town. The thought that I had concerned town employees running for office in which they might have a conflict of interest or whatever. And it occurred to me that household members of an employee of the town, if they were to run for office or be on a committee which might have some impact on the budget, which might govern their other household member who is either a firefighter, a police officer, or whatever, that just for the committee to give some consideration to that possibility.
Okay, can you give an example?
Well, let's
Oh.
say there's a firefighter whose spouse wants to run for town council and or wants to run for I don't know, some committee that might have some oversight or overview for matters that might relate to the governance of their spouse's job.
Yeah.
That's what the
Okay,
person-
that might already be covered under the state conflict of interest laws, but we can
Okay.
certainly check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Anyone else? Josh, you get your hand up? No, that was me, sorry.
Ed?
Yeah.
If I could. I just want to thank everyone for their input. It's definitely, it helps us get through this process. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to miss things. We do have another review at the end of everything. We go back over. We've already set that up in our procedures. I just wanted to say thank you for showing up and taking part. As I said earlier, and I think to Cleone's point, we have 28,000 people in this town, give or take, and it's really refreshing to see this many people coming out and spending 2 hours with us in this insomnia curing discussion. So I appreciate it.
Insomnia inducing.
Scott, I'd like to thank you for what you've been doing, because it really helps us keep things moving along, and I feel like we've been productive, and it's with the limited time that we have, it's great to have you. I think consider ourselves very lucky.
Well said, Darren. Yep. All right, any other citizen comments?
Yes, Ed, one last quick one.
Sure.
It reminded me of the comment about so many people participating in this one tonight. I sent you a private email early on, Ed. I don't know if your committee members all have a copy of Bridgewater's 2019 annual town report, but I have some still left at the office, and it might be just interesting reading for you to read through all the committees and see how many people volunteer in this town. There are lots and lots of volunteers doing really, really good work in the town. So if you're interested in looking at the annual town report and reading what each committee writes about what they've done and seeing who's serving on what committees, I just thought it might be informative for you or interesting, and you can let me know and I'll figure a way to get one to you.
Is it available online or not?
It is. Jolie, it's online, isn't it? Jolie's down there. She's always very quiet. And Becky, it's online. Yes, it's online.
Oh, that's okay.
It's online, so you can get it. If you want a hard copy with the pretty pictures and everything that, that Becky puts on the cover.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for letting us know about that. Appreciate it.
Now, I really am shutting up now.
Okay. Adeline?
One very quick comment. Marilee, would it be possible to put positions like that are available on Facebook where the 28,000 people go and increase participation that way?
Okay, so now you've made me a liar because I am not shutting up again. So that's not technically my job. I do keep a master tracking list, but it's really the town manager's job and the town website's responsibility to post all those vacancies. I know it's very out of date. I know it's not kept up to date, but Adeline, it's really a big job. It's really a lot to track. So I would love to say, yes, I would. It's something I wish could happen, but I wish it could be on the town website. I wish it could really be kept up to date on the town website, which is where I believe it should be. And then every once in a while I could post a link to that on my Facebook page and put it on the other Facebook pages, where I usually share it. But I'd really rather see the town taking charge of that, because those are really their volunteers. And
Yeah. So Adeline, one thing you might want to consider is doing, getting on the public comment for the town council meeting and making this suggestion in front of the town council. And you could email your 3 town councilors as well with a suggestion as well.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. Christina.
Just one more comment. I'm a member of a local civil rights group called BCCR, Bridgewater Communities for Civil Rights. And the town manager and assistant town manager have reached out to us and to the university, I know, to meet with us, to encourage us to explore the possibility of working on different committees. So they are actively promoting among civic groups for people to volunteer and to inform the community, different groups, such as the senior center and all of that, about what needs are, what positions are available, what the committees do, and how we can maybe volunteer and raise some interest for that. So there is some action on that.
Excellent.
Front.
Great. That's good to hear. Thank you. Okay, we are a little over our time here tonight, folks. And again, echoing what Scott said earlier, just thank you all for your participation. We'll be meeting 2 weeks from tonight on January 20th at 6 p.m. And so we don't have any items, I believe, committee, for our next meeting, any specific action items, other than to continue to read through what Scott has sent us and digest that, so we can hopefully minimize our discussion time on it and be able to vote and move forward. We are a little behind schedule right now on our charter review. We should be in Article 4 already, so we have a little bit of catch up to do. And I appreciate you, looking ahead of time at this material. So without any further ado, I'd like to take a motion for our adjournment tonight.
I, Thomas Golden, motion to adjourn the meeting.
Darren Boyce, second the motion.
All right, thank you, Darren. Any discussion on that? All right, take a roll call, Josh.
Ed,
Yes.
Cleone, Tom,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a
Aye.
good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
Night.